Barrie Trower, the former Royal Navy microwave weapons expert, and an old friend of mine, will be back on the programme in about 5-6 minutes time taking your questions. I've had, it's fair to say, over 100 questions sent in from listeners since I posted an article on the website this morning, richieallen.co.uk. 5G, I've never known an issue to set people's emotions running very high. I've never known an issue to be, in recent times anyway, to gather such momentum. And I understand it's not just people who consume the independent media, people who wouldn't ordinarily pay attention to shows like this, people who get their news from the BBC and Sky, are equally as concerned about 5G, meaning the message has gotten out there. Somehow it's gotten into the psyche of the wider public at large that there is something very, very wrong with this technology. The haste with which it is being rolled out, number one, but number two, absolutely no safety trials, no look at all, no scrutiny on it, nobody asking what are the human health implications of it. And I'm very impressed with that. You know, that is out there. Independent media or not, that issue is out there. And we'll get into it with Barrie Trower in a minute. So there you go. Somebody is telling me that they are a physicist and cyberneticist who's concerned about 5G, but their Twitter handle wouldn't give me any confidence at all. Somebody in Vancouver, in Canada, but not naming themselves, is claiming to be a physicist and a cyberneticist. Not saying they aren't, but not the best Twitter look I've ever seen in terms of lending any credibility to your claims. Maybe drop me a line, richie@richieallen.co.uk. Tell me who you are, and if you are who you are, and if you are a physicist and you do want to talk about 5G, I will facilitate you coming on the programme. Right now it's time for some music, okay? Monday's programme, a very warm studio here in Greater Manchester, the city of Salford. This is Bruce the Boss Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge of Town, the album. This is Badlands on the Richie Allen Show. Music from Bruce Springsteen and Badlands on the Richie Allen Show. It's exactly 30 seconds to the top of the hour. Welcome to the programme. Our next guest is no stranger to long-time listeners to the Richie Allen Show. I put a article on the website today soliciting questions for this great man, and you've answered right well. Over 100 questions have come in. We won't get to 100 questions, but we'll get through as many as we can. He trained at the government's microwave warfare establishment in the 1960s. He is a physicist. He has a teaching diploma, and he is a whistleblower. And he has travelled around the world in recent years lecturing on the dangers from microwave weapons and everyday microwave technologies, such as mobile phones and Wi-Fi, the dangers of non-ionising radiation. It's great to have him back on the programme. It's been a long time. Let's say hi to Mr. Barrie Trower. Barrie, always a pleasure. How are you?
Oh, okay. So I also have a degree, a university degree in nuclear and atomic physics.
And I should have mentioned that.
I have another degree in research.
And I should have mentioned those. Thanks for that, Barrie, for the clarification. You mentioned to me on Friday, put it out there to the public, Richie, and we'll see how many questions come in. Hundreds of questions have come in. Not 100, literally hundreds. And I'm going to start with one. And then I'm going to
just start with one thing, Richie, before you start.
You can, of course. Go ahead, Barrie.
Two things, actually. When you rang on Friday, I owe you an apology because you asked me if I could speak, I think it was that night, and I was hesitant. I had one of those senior moments when you get to the fridge and you open the door and couldn't remember what you went there for. And I knew I couldn't do your program that night, but I couldn't remember why. I had to go to the garage and get my car from its MOT, and I couldn't think. Just couldn't remember it. And I owe you an apology.
Not at all. Not at all, Barry.
For being so absent-minded.
Not at all.
Secondly, a gentleman telephoned me, and he said, I won't give his name, he said, I'm so-and-so from Borneo. He says, I will be listening to your show tonight, so he'll be listening to this, and he wants to send you some money, but not by computer, presumably postal order or check. Towards the end, could you sort of work out how somebody could send you a donation that doesn't come through the computer system?
We'll definitely work something out. That's really kind of that gentleman. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for saying that. And welcome back. And it's a wonderful hour we're going to have here, because I'm just going to ask the questions as they are here, and you take over the programme. There are loads of them. Cliff Moore is somebody who follows your work and has been following you for some time. And he says, please ask Barry, if I was sitting in front of a member of Parliament, a school headmaster or governor, what are the most hard-hitting pieces of information that Barry has discovered that he would recommend I use to convince them of the dangers of these technologies? That's a fantastic question, that, Barry. Cliff Moore, go ahead.
Well, if I were facing a headmaster, what I would say, or a chair of governors, I would say, if we were in court and you had caused the death of my child by having Wi-Fi in school, or whatever the situation was, and I were bringing charges of whatever it is for killing a child, if my barrister said to you, what evidence do you have to make your decision that was safe for this child, what would you say in one sentence? Because there is no safe level for a child or a person, in fact. There is no safe level. Excuse me. There is no safe level. There is nothing they can go to documentary-wise that is safe. And I have faced a barrister, a very tenacious barrister, all day in court, but I was defending an 11-year-old girl. And that brought me to this thought. I thought when I was on my way home, I thought, supposing the tables were turned and I were a parent who had lost a child to Wi-Fi in school or any other similar situation, and we took the head teacher to court or governor, and the barrister said, tell me what evidence you have that says this is safe enough for my child for a lifetime exposure while the child is in school. And they won't have a leg to stand on because there isn't one, and it's as simple as that. Brilliant.
Brilliant, Barry. I'm going to plough on with these. There are so many of them. A friend of the program's, Mark Barrie. Mark is a natural healer and a really good guy, a very sincere guy. And he asks, is Barry aware, and I know you will be aware, of the People versus 5G groups that are popping up all around Europe? Some of them want to take this issue to the European Court. And Mark reckons, with expert testimony from the likes of you, Barry, they might have a chance of winning the case to stop the rollout of 5G. Have you been approached to give expert testimony in future cases about 5G? Because a number of people, including Mark, have said they would be very much interested in helping with the funding of that. What do you think?
I work for free and I do not accept gifts. Please don't send any money to me. I will only send it back. Yes, I have been approached. I have a barrister in this country that I am in touch with. I have a barrister arriving next week from another country that I am supplying evidence to. It is on YouTube. I don't want to run a competition with you over which is the best, Richie.
Yeah.
I have if you go onto YouTube, there are 2 YouTube interviews. One is a pre-court interview with a gentleman by the name of Mark Steele, where he asked me all of the salient points to do with 5G so he could go to court. The other, and I'm choosing my words very, very carefully here, Sir Julian Rose, as in the flower rose, Sir Julian Rose, who is a friend of Prince Charles, and I'll leave it there, came here and he interviewed me for an entire day to do with 5G. He is also trying to battle against this, and not just in this country, and he put the interview on YouTube. And if you dial in Barrie Trower, Barrie with an I-E, Barrie Trower, interview with Sir Julian Rose, and there's another one with Mark Steele, you will get all of the salient points there as well.
Great. Do you think going to Brussels, going to the European Court of Human Rights, do you think that's a viable way for people to exercise their right to do something about this, Barrie? Because you know better than anyone that this has just been rolled out.
You're brilliant there, Richie. Brussels has actually refused 5G.
Fantastic.
Brussels, the senior medical person in Brussels, and this is on the internet, has actually refused 5G in Brussels.
Yeah.
Similarly, in Rome and in Vienna, where it was rolled out, there are big arguments going on because it's causing heart problems, nosebleeds, dizziness, vomiting. But Brussels, but you mentioned Brussels, they have refused it.
Yeah, I've got a quote here. It's Celine Fremont, the Minister of the government responsible for housing, quality of life, the environment and energy. And as you quite rightly said, Barrie, they suspended a trial of 5G in Brussels. And she said, I cannot welcome such technology if the radiation standards which must protect the citizen are not respected, 5G or not. The people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health I can't sell at a profit. We cannot leave anything to doubt. She's obviously a principled and a pretty brilliant woman. And yet, Barrie, not a single news programme in the United Kingdom broadcast that story or talked about it. All they're doing in the UK, it seems, is extolling the virtues of 5G, telling us about how quick everything is going to be, and ignoring the fact, as you said, that in other parts of the world, they're stopping it temporarily. The media has a lot to answer for here, Barrie.
I can take it one stage further, Richie, if I'm not insulting your intelligence.
Not at all.
In 1977, now 5G is not new. It actually goes back to 1972. But in 1977, it was actually tested in a proper scientific experiment on animals and people. The very, very same frequencies you are getting in this country today. It was tested and they found that when they exposed people and animals to, which is something I disapprove of immensely, but there's nothing I can do about that. When they exposed people and animals to just 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes, a quarter of an hour, for 60 days, so we're looking at a total of 15 hours over 60 days, and the level of radiation, I won't go into units, the level of radiation was up to the number 62. They found severe demyelinization of cells. In other words, if you wanted to move an arm or a leg or any muscle, and you've got over 600 in your body, they wouldn't work properly. Your senses were especially sensitive to light, noise, and pain. In other words, you felt pain a lot worse than it was. With the animals and people, they found skin, liver, heart, brain, adrenals, that's kidney, blood, all sorts of problems, everything to do with eyes because they're moist, chest pains, nosebleeds, dizziness. That was on a level of 62. Legally in this country, you and I and everybody else, even pregnant women, can be exposed to a level of 140, more than twice what is known and published to cause severe harm.
Back in 1977, Barry, what were they doing with that technology? What were their plans for it? It obviously wasn't wireless communication at the time, or was it?
Oh no, they were.
It was a weapon.
Microwaves in those days were the new wonder stealth weapon.
Right.
Because they are undetectable. You can't prove where they've come from, and they were testing frequencies basically to see whether they would make a good stealth weapon. And the 5G frequency is the latest 5G weapon, was produced last year in this country. So it's still being used as a weapon. But they were testing it as a weapon to see what it would affect in terms of animals for biological warfare, plants, because they destroy trees and plants, they destroy crops, farming animals. Just by beaming them down on countries, you can decimate a country for whatever reason you want. And of course, you can decimate people. So it was being used to see what harm it would cause. And in here, it was only over 15 hours, over 60 days. Now, what we're saying in this country is you can have 24 hours a day exposure, and legally we can give you more than twice that dose, is what they're actually saying.
Do you think that the chief executives of the big mobile technology companies, do you think that they understand what it is that you've just told me, or are they in the dark about it?
I would probably think they're in the dark, sir, because the people who are advising on this, and none of our MPs know anything about this, neither the ministers. You have to go through the chain of command, and what you have for 42% of the planet is being controlled by roughly about 20-25 self-appointed scientific advisors, some of whom are on the payroll of the industry, which is not new for anything. And so these self-appointed people, known as the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, which advises our Public Health England, and some of them sit on both boards, they are self-appointed. They don't answer to anybody. And they are basically responsible for 42% of the planet. And the MPs here just rub their hands because they've just taken over $1 billion in license fee for 5G, plus the taxes, plus everything else. So they're rubbing their hands. But no, I mean, the people running this don't actually answer to anybody.
Ian McKee has a question. Barrie Trower. I won't give you Barry's CV again because it is extensive. Barry is an academic, very qualified man, and a former Royal Navy weapons expert. And like I said, his CV goes on and on and on. And he spent many years, he's a whistleblower, trying to educate people as to the dangers of these technologies in the absence of any journalist or media organisation doing that job. Ian McKee says, is Barry certain that the new LED streetlights with the antenna on top will act as nodes? What do you think, Barry?
The answer to that, sir, and I'll just, if he's sort of interested in my CV, my dissertation for my nuclear and atomic degree, my dissertation was on the far end of the microwave absorption. I wanted to see mathematically how it is absorbed. And my other research degree was environmental influences on thinking processes, which involved microwaves on the brain. LEDs, the answer to that is I don't know, because the lorries go round and put LEDs into lampposts. I have no idea what the electrical engineers have put inside the devices. I have no idea what they are transmitting. I do know for 5G, you need them every 150 yards or every 150 meters because they want to set up a grid. You have local grids that will tune in and complement the grids for smart meters, Wi-Fi, all of the other things, radar, medical equipment. So you're having big blocks of grids, and they're having them every 150 meters. But what goes into the street lights, which are very conveniently that far apart, I have no idea. That they haven't sent me one. They haven't told me what they're putting in. And unless you can have somebody who's putting them in that says, this is a 5G transmitter, this is something, I don't know. You would need to direct that question to a knowledgeable electrical engineer.
And it's 6 cities this year it's being trialled in the UK. Manchester, where I'm based in, Greater Manchester, is one of them. And listeners are asking about the trees. Why the culling of, or the felling, not culling, the felling of so many trees? Why do they need to do that? If this is such a tiny millimetre wave, and if it's capable of permeating anything, why are they destroying trees, Barry, do we know?
Well, 2 reasons, sir. The first is rather selfish for the council, because it is known and published that all microwaves, but particularly 5G and Wi-Fi, but 5G will destroy trees. They cause trees to lose their immune system. The trees then become sick to their tree viruses and bacteriums. And when you have a sick tree, it's actually very, very expensive to get rid of a sick tree, because you can't burn them because you release the viruses and things back into the atmosphere. And so it's easier just to cut the trees down in the first place, something I disagree with intensely. The other reason is that the penetrative power of 5G is very small. They are absorbed by surface moisture on trees, especially if it's raining. But this is why the skin is particularly sensitive to 5G. 5G will settle across the skin. It will do immense damage to your ocular system, in other words, your eyes, immense damage to your kidneys, which are near the surface of the skin. So 5G will irritate the skin and the senses, and of course penetrate the surface area of the head, the ears. But it's wrong to say it won't go inside the body, because some of the pulses will, and some of the vectors, the electric vector will settle over the skin, the magnetic vector will tend to go into the body. But they do, 5G, because of its wavelength, will do most of the damage on the surface of things. And it will stop the trees and the plants functioning the same as it will stop humans functioning, because it just penetrates a few centimeters in, and it will destroy your blood, your skin, your nerves, and then you have a knock-on effect into the body. But primarily, there are 2 reasons. One, it saves them coming along to destroy a sick tree, which is infinitely more expensive than a healthy tree. And secondly, the trees will prevent the 5G waves reaching their destination.
Which is pretty sick when you think of it in those terms, Barry. Look, I spoke to Chris Busby last week, and Chris said something that stuck with me. He said, mobile phone technology, the old mobile phones, which you have been warning about for years, and Chris Busby has been warning about the dangers of mobile phone microwaves for years as well. And Chris said, the older technology, we're now beginning to see higher cancer rates among people. And even though the media doesn't want to talk about it, we know that the old mobile phones, the damage that they created, we're seeing it now 10, 15, 20 years later. It's a very interesting point. But I think Chris Busby was of the opinion, and I'm fascinated by your opinion, that the damage that you've just described from the 5G wave is not going to take as long in terms of how quick it'll show up in the population in terms of adverse health effects. So we will see people dealing with health problems quicker than we did with the old mobile phones. Is that right? It's going to be expedited.
There are 2 points here, sir. The first is the damage, for reasons that I'm not clever enough to answer, but the damage from 5G seems to be more instant. The moment it was switched on in Vienna, people almost instantly started having cardiac problems, dizziness, vomiting, feeling seasick. The problems were almost instant. The other situation where we're going to feel this more, and I think it's going to be a two-pronged attack, because, and I wasn't clever enough to realize this until I read it. A professor from Surrey University actually wrote this, and he said, look, he said, insects have a higher surface to volume ratio. In other words, when you look at the flying, anything that flies, you have the surface area of the wings and the surface area of the body, and that is greater than the volume that the body holds. We are the other way around. And he said, when you put these 5G in lampposts, he said, at night, insects congregate around lampposts. And what they are noticing is that there is, in some countries, a 90% loss of insects, and flying, anything that flies really, insects and birds, where they congregate around the 5G transmitters, and they're having a 90% loss of pollinating insects, including bees, for their crops. And funny enough, I was reading a report today where another country said they're experiencing a 75% increase in loss of insects since 5G. So I think that the physical health to people is going to be one problem, but I think it's going to be surpassed, because when you have a 90% of arthropodia, or pollinating insects, they pollinate 80% of the food sources of the Western world, 80%. And if you think about us losing 80% of our crops, not to mention the cattle that are also going to be ill now, we are actually going to be in quite a serious situation whereby there are going to be food shortages, and these have started because I have had reports from some countries that rely solely, because they cannot import foods, they rely solely on their vitamin C from fruit plants and fruit trees. And they now do not have the pollinators, and they are starting to get scurvy. And we are going to see this in this country. You are going to see shortages of food where it has not been pollinated, and you are going to see quite a substantial rise in the price of food and the shortages in food. And people are going to panic as they do. And I'm not saying this politically, but the only people who are going to survive are going to be those who are extremely wealthy and can afford to sort of shop at Harrods and get what they want where they want. But the majority of the country are going to be fighting for food and suffering from all sorts of malnutrition disorders. So you're going to get a double-pronged attack. And I'm not the only one saying this. If you do the research I do daily, this is very apparent. You're going to get the double-pronged attack where you have sick people, and you are also going to have not the resources for people to get a healthy diet to recover.
Barrie Trower is our guest this hour, and we've got 25 minutes or thereabouts left. There are a lot of questions, and I do appreciate them. I'm going to get through as many of them as we can. A number of different listeners sent in the same question, and it was about geoengineering or aerosol spraying in the skies. Some people refer to it as chemtrail spraying. And a lot of people, and some of them very smart people, believe that this is genuinely happening, that heavy metal spraying in the atmosphere is going on, and that they feel that it is somehow connected to this 5G agenda. And I've been asked to put to you, what are your thoughts on that at all?
Yes, we're going into microwave warfare, which is not new and has been practiced, since the 40s. There are a couple of points here, and I'll be as quick and as brief as I can, because I could do the whole program just on this.
Of course you could.
Yes, they are correct. Now, experimentally, when you release metals into the air, into the clouds are radioactive, and they can generate their own X-rays and gamma rays. If you release metal particles into clouds, they can exacerbate the radioactivity of the clouds, inside the clouds. If you then beam microwaves into the clouds from any one of the 16 now HARP-type transmitter devices around the world, and there are 16 of them, you can, by the laws of physics, you can actually move clouds. And I'm not saying making a cloud suddenly whiz from one side of the sky to another. You can actually move the atmosphere, the moisture in the atmosphere, and you can move clouds. And if you look at the jet stream, which is around 5 miles up, the jet stream around 5 miles up travels around 200 miles an hour. If you just nudge the jet stream, and we're talking not very far at all, it's traveling at 200 miles an hour, and you can actually cause severe hurricanes the other side of the world once it's been round the world a few times, or you can cause severe drought. And this can be used to cause a country to be in great distress, where if it does not have the utilities it needs, food or water, to help its populations, you can then move in and rescue that country for a price. And the price is usually quite a lot of land for military bases, and this has already happened, mineral rights, mining rights, land rights, whatever it is. So there is this sort of intercontinental espionage that can go on, and it has been used in warfare, certainly in some countries where you have dropped metals into clouds, and I won't say what they are, but you can produce massive thunderstorms which stops countries moving military around, vehicles around, so you can stop the movement. There are as many uses as your imagination can think of. And the only way to test these, of course, is chemtrails, not to be confused with contrails, which naturally come out the back of aircraft, chemtrails, chemical trails. And it has been done, and it's been written up, where chemtrails have been dropped from aircraft, and then you have had a city or a town, even in this country, where a lot of people suddenly report sick, and they just test the speed, the level of distribution, the height it took, when it took to sort of discover, and these are going on all the time in terms of stealth warfare, biological warfare.
Who are these people, Barry? This is the crux of it now. I want to acknowledge there are a lot of questions coming in. Barrie Trower is our guest. Barry put the call out to send in your questions, and you answered. There are dozens of questions still coming in. Barry has been talking about what 5G technology really is and how it is going to impact on the health of people in the cities where it is rolled out. It's devastating. We've just been talking about how it joins the dots, how it connects to the geoengineering or the aerosol spraying agenda. Barry, it's obvious to me that 5G as a means to speed up our internet connectivity is a smokescreen. It's not about that. It's about something far more sinister and terrible and unthinkable maybe for many people. Who or what is behind it? Because it looks like a culling of the population. It's gone beyond experimentation, in my opinion. It looks like they're culling, or they're planning to cull large swathes of the population. Who or what is doing this?
There are several answers here, and I'll be as brief as I can.
You don't have to be brief. Take your time, by the way.
First of all, it doesn't speed up anything, because all microwaves are part of the electromagnetic spectrum. They all travel at the same speed, which is the speed of light. So what it does do, it doesn't speed it up, it carries more information. What you can do with 5G is they have carrier waves, which are generally the old, really the old analog waves. They use those as carrier waves, rather like a conveyor belt at an airport. And what 5G will do is it will download more information because of its small wavelength. It will download more information onto the carousel. So if you want, for instance, football matches and pornography and everything all happening on the smallest possible device, with sound, with this, with that, then whatever your heart's desire is, they can deliver it, because 5G will carry about 100 times more information. It won't carry it faster, it carries more information, and you get more information, not faster information. So, for instance, if you wanted a half of your screen on with pornography and the other half with the latest FA Cup, you could have it. So it carries more information. It's not faster. The other thing is, when you notice, and I don't want to be disrespectful here, but when you look at where most of this is coming out, and I don't know if there is a political agenda, I am not politically educated, but most of the transmitters, most of the saturation is in the areas of heavily populated, what we would say poor people, just ordinary people who are low paid, densely populated. They tend to be in those areas, and I have been to them and I've represented them in court in many countries. But they tend to be, you seldom see all of this apparatus in wealthy areas, because the wealthy have the ability to take the industry to court, whereas poor people don't. And I don't mean to be insulting here, but when you look at where the trouble areas are, they tend to be densely populated, hard-working, ordinary, honest, poor people, and they are the ones that are going down with the illnesses. And I do know that in one area, 17,000 transmitters have been taken down, not in this country, where the government has actually respected the work done by the poor in their factories and has taken down 17,000 factories.
Wow.
But I doubt if you would see it in this country.
No, and I just want to say this. Whenever you and I have spoken in the past, we've referred to a paper published by you, one of many papers, but it's one that I recommend people read all the time. It's your paper, Wi-Fi, a thalidomide in the making, who cares? Now, I've just put a link to that on Twitter for anybody listening to this program who hasn't read that paper by Barrie Trower, and I will put a link to where you can find his other papers. But it's really important to people listening to the program for the first time. They came on to hear this information, that you read Wi-Fi, a thalidomide in the making, who cares, by Barrie Trower.
Could I explain that, sir?
You can, go ahead.
An 11-year-old girl actually came to me and said, could you prevent me having a genetically disabled child, or give birth to a dead child? And she was 11. And she said, would you write a research paper for me that I can show my teacher? And I said, absolutely. And to explain this, and I said it on the cover, the paper is written in Janet and John. It is a health and safety warning. In other words, it's not a research paper. It is a health and safety warning that an 11-year-old girl can use to put her argument to the teacher. And in that paper, I referenced the World Health Organization saying that the minimum number of children being exposed to Wi-Fi in class, the minimum number who can expect a genetically disabled child or a stillbirth is 47.7% for the teacher, and you can add 10 or 20%. We don't know how the calculus works at the moment, but it's 10 or 20% added onto that for the child. And that was done, that paper was written in I think the 70s. The follow-up paper, which was carried out by the European Academy for Environmental Medicine, actually agreed with that. So it's been researched twice, but at least a half of the school children today can expect a miscarriage or a stillbirth. It is a health and safety warning, nothing else, just the paper. And in it, I quoted who would be friendly if you approach them and who would be unfriendly if you approach them. And in unfriendly, I quoted MPs because they won't help you. And I quoted the universities who banned me from research, and other people. I just laid it out for the 11-year-old girl, who would be friendly, who she could talk to, and what proof she needed. It is just a sort of a health hazard report.
It's very, very useful, though, as an entry level for people who need to understand a bit more about the capability of the technology. I want to just pick you up on something you said there. So schoolgirls attending school in 2019, you think half of them are certain to experience the heartbreak of miscarriage or something like that in their lifetime?
More than half. More than half. Because that was when we were up to sort of 3G, 4G and Wi-Fi. Now, I mean, you have 5G fitted into the grid. It will be more than half. It has to be a minimum for schoolgirls because of the moisture in their body, the electrical conductivity, and other factors I won't go into now. It has to be a minimum of 57.7%. Those are not my figures. Those are the World Health Organization, who kept the paper secret on the behest of the American government, and the European Council for Environmental Medicine, who have actually published. And in fact, the European Council, the European Parliament, came out with a statement, and it's in my paper, saying ban Wi-Fi from schools for this reason. But if you said to me, what research will absolutely demonstrate that 57.7% of our girls will suffer miscarriage or stillbirth, I would say it is between, according to the world experts before it was suppressed and kept secret, it has to be greater than 57.7%, and it probably would not exceed 67.7%.
We talk on this programme to learned men and women, learned like yourself, and they say things that are, again, unthinkable. And I have to shake my head and say, did you just hear that? Did you just hear an academic say that there is a depopulation agenda and that Agenda 21, Agenda 30, these are real things, and that ultimately the end game here is to get rid of as many as a half or 3/4 of the global population. And no matter how academic or how moderate you want to be, and I don't mean you personally, Barry, it's something that you've got to consider, because the people behind this stuff, they know that it does what you've just outlined. And if they know that, and they consciously put it in to the public domain anyway, that must mean that they want to do great harm to humankind. That's what I conclude. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I have to take that conclusion. It's Occam's razor for me, Barry.
Whether they want to do harm deliberately, I don't know. What I do know, and is what I have in writing, and in writing, this stemmed from the United States. I have nothing against the United States. This stems from the United States. The organization is known as MIC. It is the Military and Industrial Complex. And they have a sole motive behind this, and I have the research paper, and I've published it, and it's in that paper which you have kindly suggested people read. The United States government with the military said that a false safety level must be given to the people so they believe it is safe. I'm paraphrasing what they've written here, but the reason for this is to, and I'm quoting their words now, protect industrial output. In other words, profit. So what I'm thinking, whether they want to depopulation the planet, I don't know. But what I can be certain to say is that they are protecting industrial profit, and everybody who suffers is collateral damage. That is acceptable. It is acceptable to have this amount of collateral damage as long as they protect industrial profit. And there is nothing new here. Smoking was linked to cancer actually in 1599. With all of the science was there to stop smoking in 1939. The industry complex with government kept that going for another 50 years. Similarly with lead in petrol, they tried to stop it, and the industry kept it going. Similarly with diesel, asbestos, Agent Orange, and it goes on. It seems that there is an industry, military, government complex that is immune from prosecution. They are above the law. They've never been taken to court, and they can commit genocide on the basis of industrial profit. And this is what all this is about. It is in writing. There is no dispute. We have, to my knowledge, for 42% of the Western world, no more than 25 people who are advising all of the European, the Australian, New Zealand governments. They're controlling 42% of the planet. They are doing it to protect industrial output. Whoever dies, it is collateral damage. However the countries suffer, it is collateral damage. But you can rest your assurances that they will be okay and they will be harmed.
And they'll be fine. I mean, the damage caused by cigarettes and the damage caused by asbestos and lead in petrol and the other things you mentioned, that would seem to be a drop in the ocean compared to what 5G is going to do. And on that, there's a final question, and you've got 5 minutes to answer it if you want, if you need them. It's a question that's been asked by a lot of people. Look, I would never urge any man or woman to break the law, and I wouldn't endorse breaking the law, because the consequences for people can be profound in terms of their occupation, in terms of their freedom and everything else. But a number of people are saying, are we going to have to start taking the law into our own hands? If the media is hiding this, if the local so-called health authorities are ignoring this, how can we allow this happen outside our front doors? Surely we're going to have to vandalise these things ourselves. Now, there's a lot of those tweets, genuinely a lot of people asking that. I'm not endorsing violence or destruction of property at all, because it can get you into serious trouble. But people can't seem to see, Barry, another way around it. What are we going to do if they drop this stuff outside our front door?
There are a couple of things here, sir. The first is, I appreciate there are lots of questions, and according to your schedule, would you invite me back, hopefully within a month or 6 weeks?
Of course.
To continue and have the rest of the questions.
Absolutely, because there's dozens more relevant and valid questions.
I promise I will be available in the next month.
Marvellous.
If you ring me tomorrow or the next day, we'll come up with another date. Secondly, what I would recommend is, first of all, do not take the law into your own hands, because every single transmitter comes under the Official Secrets Act. Every one. Even a single 5G transmitter, everything comes under the Official Secrets Act the moment it is switched on. And if you start destroying it or interrupting it, you will find a big van turn up outside your front door. Men will jump out dressed in black, carrying guns, and you will disappear into a cell for quite a long time. Do not do that, because as well as stopping this, which you wouldn't do, you are also disrupting the emergency services, the secret services, and just about everybody else, the 70 to 80 organizations, Coast Guard, that use these systems as well. What you can do is, when we have another election for councillors and MPs, and I suspect there is one coming, stand as an independent MP to get a safe communication system, because it can be made safe. I can't go into how now, I don't have time, but stand as an MP on one issue. That is that we will have a safe communication system that can be enjoyed by all. You can have everything you want today and more, but it can be delivered safely. Stand as an MP, and if we get enough of you, then you have the publicity, and you can talk to the press, you can talk to the papers, you can actually become a real pain in the backside in Parliament, and that is the way to do it. You do it through legal means. I do know one person that has done this, and she was quite successful, but it needs more than one. You stand as an MP on this one issue, an independent MP, and you do it.
Barrie, thanks for coming back on today. I will phone you in the mid-morning tomorrow without fail to arrange you to come back to carry on with the Q&A, because there are many more questions coming in and have come in as well, and I feel a bit bad about it, but I knew we would get a lot of questions. We've covered an enormous amount of ground anyway, but there's still much more we can get into. So thanks for coming back on today. I'll be...
It's my pleasure, sir, and
brilliant.
If I'm out tomorrow, would you just leave a message and I'll get back to you?
I will indeed, Barrie. Thanks again for today.
My pleasure, sir, and thank you for all the listeners with their questions.
Fantastic. Thank you as well. Barrie Trower live on the line to us from his home. And like I said, there were a lot of questions that came in today. I'm sorry about that. Not getting through them. Rich tweets, sabotage of telecoms falls under the anti-terror laws. Don't touch for feck's sake. Or like he said, you will be lifted. And Rich is saying that Barrie is right. You go smashing down some of these things and you might get into trouble. You're guaranteed to get into trouble. One or two people are tweeting just now that they... hang on a second. That they don't agree with Barrie's ultimate solution to stand on a platform and put your name down and your money, put your money into an electoral race. Many of you saying already coming through that you don't believe that it matters. And yeah, I mean, I can't be a hypocrite. I don't see that as a solution, but Barrie obviously does. Patricia tweets, I would love to believe that our voting counts. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes real action to get results. Hitting the streets in massive numbers might be the only way to be heard. Just a thought. Well, it's not shocking to me, because I've been around the block so many times and I've done so many different programs critiquing the media and how it works. But even I'm sometimes naive, you know, knowing what I know, having worked at every level of the media. When the Belgian Environment Minister says, no, we better pause this trial of 5G technology because I don't want to be playing with the health and the lives of my fellow Belgians. It might be dangerous, so we should stop it and not do the trial. That should have been national news in this country, because of the fact that EE and Vodafone are going to be putting this stuff in 6 cities in the coming months. It should have been blasted across the media. Wow, maybe we need to rethink this 5G thing. In Belgium, they're saying it might be dangerous. Not a whisper in the media in this country. Not a whisper, nothing. Nobody even picked up the Belgian national newspaper articles, which would have been seen by health editors in the UK. When I say health editors, people who edit and write health articles for broadsheet newspapers, they would have seen that stuff in the Belgian media and they would have said, right, well, we should be writing about this. But they don't, you know. But like I said at the beginning of the programme, at the very top of the programme, I'm very impressed at how many people who do not get their information from the independent media already know that something is up with this technology. I don't know why that is, but it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me that without ever paying attention to my program or programs like it, or writers and researchers like the people who come on this program, without knowing any of that stuff, people know there's something gravely wrong here. It's quite amazing, that. Big shout out again to Barrie Trower for coming back in the program, and thanks to Tony Gosling for his report on the Bilderberg meeting which took place in Switzerland over the weekend. Really appreciate that. Check out thisweek.org.uk for more on the Politics Show with Tony Gosling, and the website bilderberg.org is the go-to place if you want to learn more about the Bilderberg Group, where it came from and what it does, right? That's the end of the programme today. Join me in the AM tomorrow at 9:30 on YouTube, where I'll be looking at the day's papers. That's a half an hour from 9:30 in the morning. And if you missed that, you'll catch me here again tomorrow at 5. Until then, bye for now. Bye now.